wanted to touch base on habits. So let's actually break down what a habit is, kind of the mechanism behind how it works, and then we'll also talk about why you can actually replace a habit you don't want with a habit that you prefer. So as always, please like and comment the video if you find this useful. That's very helpful to get that feedback. So when we're talking about habits, let's start by saying life is just a collection of habits. When our brain turns a sequence of events into an automatic routine, it's known as something called chunking. So there are dozens, if not hundreds, of chunks that we rely on every day. So, for example, it's like if you're putting toothpaste on your toothbrush before sticking it in your mouth, you're doing that every day. That would be like a chunk. Or say you pick up your phone and then you just start scrolling through social media. That would be another chunk. So those are just examples of chunks. So others are complicated to the point where it's actually kind of wild to think about, like, how much we don't think about things that are really complicated. And the reason we don't think about it is because it's such a habit. So, for example, take the act of backing your car out of the driveway. When we first learned how to do that, it took a lot of concentration. If you think about backing out of a driveway or backing out of a parking lot now, you don't even think about it, right? But really break down what we're doing when we do that. Say you're backing out of your driveway, you're opening the garage, you're unlocking the car door, you're adjusting the seat, you're inserting the key in the ignition, you're turning it clockwise, you're moving the rear view and the side mirrors and checking for obstacles, you're putting your foot on the brake, you're moving the gear shift into reverse, then you're removing your foot from the brake, then you're estimating the distance between the garage and the street while keeping the wheels aligned and simultaneously monitoring for oncoming traffic. You're calculating the distances between your back bumper, maybe the garbage cans are back there, maybe some lawn hedges, all while applying slight pressure to the gas pedal and the brake, and simultaneously telling whatever passenger you got with you to stop messing with the volume on your head unit. Now, when you hear all that, it sounds super complicated, right? But we back out of the driveway, back out of parking lots every day, and we don't even think about it. And that's the power of a habit. So the reason that this happens is because basically the brain is always looking for ways to save effort. And the brain will make almost any routine into a habit because basically it allows the mind to just kind of ramp down. So we want the mind to ramp down because then it'll be more efficient, right? So an efficient brain will allow us to stop thinking constantly about basic things like walking or choosing what to eat. So, humans can spend more mental energy on more complicated things, like back when we were cavemen, inventing spears, and then we created irrigation systems and then airplanes, so on and so on. So basically, let's move to the structure of a habit and how exactly a habit works. So in case you never heard this before, this is crucial. This is what we call a habit loop. Any habit that you run into, it's gonna have these three parts. So first is a cue, then is a routine, and then the reward. So the cue is the trigger that tells your brain to go kind of into automatic mode, and it kind of tells you which habit that we're about to use. So the routine, that would be whatever the habit is. So it could be physical, it could be mental, it could be emotional. And then the reward at the end is what helps the brain figure out if the loop is kind of worth remembering for the future. So over time, this little cycle, the cue, the routine, the reward, the cue, the routine, the reward, it just becomes more and more automatic. And this is essentially how habits are formed. That cue, that trigger in the beginning, and the reward at the end, they start to become intertwined until this powerful sense of anticipation and craving emerges. So for an example, let's talk about brushing your teeth. So, an example of brushing your teeth, the cue would be it's time to go to bed. That would be the cue that kicks that off. Or it might just be like, oh, my breath stinks. Those are two things that could be a cue. So after you go through the cue, then you go through the routine, right? You go ahead and you brush your teeth. That would be a physical action that you're doing. And then at the end, you would get the reward. In this case, it would be that feeling of satisfaction and that clean feeling and then that taste where you're just like, like that's the reward that fuels it. So next time that cue comes up tomorrow when it's bedtime, or you kind of see that your breath stinks, you're going to go right into that routine, and then you get that reward again, and then that's what fuels it to keep going and to keep going. Let me give you another example. Since we did brushing teeth, we'll do something on the other end of the spectrum. A heroin addict. Why not, right? So a heroin addict, their cue could be a stressful or emotional situation. It could be an environmental cue, like it could be a place that's associated with past drug use. It could be a person or a situation that's associated with past drug use. Or it could just be like a physical craving or even a withdrawal symptom. Those could all be cues for a heroin addict. The routine obviously would be locating the heroin and then injecting yourself with it. That would be the physical routine that person had decided upon. The reward would be the good feelings of euphoria that wash over their body. And then that reward is really what's going to cement that habit in for that person, and that's what's fueling that loop. So the next time they're in a stressful situation or an emotional situation, or the next time they see something that just kind of triggers them, like they're going to go straight into that routine, and then they're going to feel that reward, and then it's just going to repeat, and repeat. So knowing what we know about that structure, something that really is important to remember is habits aren't destiny. Habits can be ignored. Habits can be changed. Habits can be replaced. We're not stuck into anything. And when they figured out the habit loop with the cue and the routine and the reward, it was like a really important discovery because it kind of revealed like a basic truth, which is our brain just stops participating in decision making when a habit emerges. It just goes in a straight automatic mode. And the reason it stops working so hard is so it can divert focus to other tasks. For example, has anybody ever had it where, say you're driving home from work and you're simultaneously on the phone the whole time, and sometimes you just get so lost in the convo that you don't even remember how you got home. Like, you drove home, but you don't even remember. It was like automated, you didn't even have to think about it. That shows you why it's so important for us to go into automatic mode so we can do things like that. So the reason that that's important to remember is unless you like fight a habit with intention, and unless you find new routines, the pattern is just going to unfold automatically. So understanding the structure of the loop really makes it easier to kind of control what our habits are. They've actually done studies with rats where they'll put like a reward in like one part of a maze, and they'll have the rats just kind of run through that maze to get that reward until it becomes a habit. And then they'll kind of fool around with it a little bit they'll try to extinguish that habit by taking that reward and putting it someplace else in the maze. So then, of course, the rats, they adjust, and then they go find that new place. But the funny thing that happens is they'll take that reward and then they'll put it right back into the original spot, and instantly the rat remembers the old habit. The reason that that's important is because it shows that habits never really disappear. They are like encoded within our brain. And that's actually an advantage, because if it wasn't, it'd be like, imagine going on vacation, and then when you come back from vacation, you have to relearn how to drive every single time. It would be a pain in the ass, right? So you can see why it's important for us to have that automatic responses. But the problem is the brain can't tell the difference between the good habits and the bad habits. So let's go here. So this is the positive thing. We don't have to be slaves to our habits. Just knowing that habit loops are just a cue a routine and a reward, it can really help us see what's going on in our head. And it's useful because we can identify the routine so that we're aware of what our habit is, and then we could try switching out a different routine. And then, knowing that a reward is what kind of fuels that, we can experiment with different rewards at the end to see if we can get our preferred routine to start sticking as a habit. And then also, sometimes just knowing what the cue is, it can be super important to managing an addiction. Like, imagine if you're, alcoholic, and you're trying to figure out, why, and then you kind of start using your awareness to realize, okay, it's this time of the day I start thinking about drinking. That's my cue. Or this person says something like this to me, I start thinking about drinking. That's my cue. Knowing that can be very helpful, because when that person knows their cue, now they can be like, okay, I know the routine's next. I don't want to do that routine. Let me replace it with another routine. Once they replace that with the other routine, then they can put a reward at the end, probably a preferred healthy reward, and then they can see if they can start replacing that habit. It's just rewiring the brain. Whatever habit that we have, it wasn't always there. It's something that we learned. So that just shows that we can learn a new habit that we prefer, to replace the old one. So yeah, once you figure out the reward is driving the behavior and the cue that's triggering it and the routine itself, you can begin to shift the behavior. But for that, you really need to have a plan. But if you have a plan in place, you can definitely replace your habits. And if you change a habit, you can change a life. And working with a life coach like myself, or somebody else who's trained in that, can make it easier to figure out the structure of your habits and help brainstorm replacement habits. So you can really change from feeling like trapped in your automated or automatic responses, and you can just liberate yourself into your full personal power. And like I said, that's something that I personally talk about in my 90-day coaching program. If that's something that anybody's interested in, make sure to comment or send me a DM. But otherwise, that's what I want to say about habits. Thank you, Find Your Light community. Please like and comment the video if you found this information interesting. And as always, please enjoy your week. Bye.